Hey there, my friend. Come closer because today I need to tell you something that's been weighing on my heart. This is a story about war, yes, but more than that. It's about what happens when the human heart refuses to follow orders. It's about a man who had everything figured out, who knew exactly what his duty was until he met someone who made him question every single thing he believed in. This is the story of Sergeant Daniel Cross, a Green Beret in the Vietnam War, and the Vietnamese nurse who became both his salvation and his damnation. I'm telling you right now, this story is going to shake you. It's going to make you ask yourself, what would you do if loving someone meant betraying everything you stood for? So settle in, because what I'm about to share with you is a dramatized fictional narrative, created for educational purposes, but inspired by the kind of impossible choices that real soldiers faced during one of the most complex wars in history. Let's begin. March 1969. The central highlands of Vietnam. The jungle was alive with sounds that didn't belong to nature. Sergeant Daniel Cross crouched behind a fallen teak tree, his M16 gripped tight, sweat pouring down his face despite the cool mountain air. He was 32 years old, a career soldier, a man who'd volunteered for his third tour because he didn't know how to be anything but a warrior. His team, 5 Green Berets handpicked for Operation Silent Thunder, had been inserted into the highlands 3 days ago with a mission that could change the trajectory of the war. Intelligence had identified a Viet Cong supply route running through a village called Phuoc Minh. The village sat in a valley invisible from the air, protected by mountains and triple canopy jungle. For months, weapons and ammunition had been flowing through there into the hands of enemy forces. Cross's orders were clear: infiltrate the village, pose as a wounded ARVN soldier, gather intelligence on the supply network, and call in coordinates for an airstrike that would obliterate the route. It was a suicide mission dressed up as reconnaissance. Everyone knew it. But Cross had stopped caring about odds a long time ago, back when his brother died in Khe Sanh, back when he realized that survival was just another word for luck. They reached Phuoc Minh at dawn. The village was small, maybe 40 wooden structures built on stilts, rice paddies stretching out like mirrors reflecting the grey sky, children running barefoot through mud, old women carrying water. Cross's team split up, melting into the edges of the village. Cross himself, his arm wrapped in fake bandages stained with pig's blood, stumbled into the village center like a man who'd barely escaped death. Within minutes, hands were on him, voices speaking rapid Vietnamese. He let himself fall, playing the part, and through half-closed eyes, he saw her. She was kneeling beside him, her hands already moving to check his pulse, her face a mask of concentration. She couldn't have been more than 25, with long black hair tied back, wearing the simple black pants and white shirt of a rural nurse. But it was her eyes that stopped him, dark and intelligent, filled with a sadness that seemed older than her years. "You're not ARVN," she said quietly in Vietnamese, her fingers pressing against his wrist. "Your calluses are wrong. Your breathing is controlled. You're American Special Forces." Cross's hand moved instinctively toward the knife hidden in his boot, but she pressed down on his chest, her eyes meeting his. "Don't," she whispered. "I'm not going to expose you. But you need to understand something. This village isn't what your intelligence says it is." Her name was Linh Nguyen. Over the next 3 days, as Cross played his role and gathered information, he learned her story in stolen moments, in whispered conversations when no one else was listening. She'd been a medical student in Saigon before the war consumed everything. Her fiancé had been killed by American bombs during a raid on a suspected Viet Cong position, a raid that had actually hit a civilian market. Her family had been scattered, lost to the chaos of war. She'd come to Phuoc Minh because there was nowhere else to go, because people were dying and she had the skills to save them. "I treat everyone," she told him one night, when he found her in the small clinic at the edge of the village. Viet Cong ARVN villagers, even American pilots who crash in the jungle. I don't ask which side they fight for. Pain doesn't have politics, Sergeant Cross. "You know my name," he said, surprised. "You talk in your sleep," she replied, a ghost of a smile crossing her face. "You dream about someone named Michael, your brother." Cross felt something crack inside him. He died at Khe Sanh, January 21st, 1968. I wasn't there. I was on another mission, following orders, doing my duty, and he died screaming for me. Lin stepped closer. And now you're here, following more orders, ready to call in death on this village because someone in Saigon drew a line on a map and decided we're all the enemy. The intelligence is solid, Cross said, but his voice lacked conviction. Weapons are moving through here, we've confirmed it. Yes, Lin said quietly. They are. Because the Viet Cong come through, and they take our rice and our young men, and if we resist, they kill us. And then your side comes through and you bomb us because you think we're helping them. We're not on anyone's side. Daniel, we're just trying to survive. It was the first time she'd used his first name. The intimacy of it hit him like a punch. Over the next week, something impossible happened. Cross's mission became secondary to the moments he could steal with Lin. They would meet after dark in the forest beyond the village, where the rules of war seemed to dissolve in the darkness. She taught him Vietnamese words he'd never learned in training. He told her about Montana, about the ranch where he'd grown up, about a life that seemed as distant as the moon. What happens when your mission is over? She asked him one night, her head resting against his shoulder as they sat beneath a banyan tree. I call in the coordinates, Cross said, the words tasting like ash. And then the bombers come and everything here disappears. Including me, Lin said softly. I won't let that happen, Cross heard himself say. I'll find a way to get you out. And my patients? The children? The old women who've lived here their entire lives? You'll save them too? Cross had no answer. The impossibility of the situation crashed over him like a wave. He was a soldier. He had orders. He had a team depending on him. But when he looked at Lin, when he felt her hand in his, all of that seemed meaningless compared to the simple fact that he was falling in love with her, and love was the one thing war had no protocol for. The breaking point came on day 12. Cross's team leader, Captain Marcus Wade, pulled him aside during a supply check. We have the coordinates, Wade said, his voice flat. The supply cache is in a cave system 2 clicks north of the village. Command wants the strike tomorrow at 600 hours. We extract tonight. Tomorrow? Cross's mind raced. We need more time to verify. Verify what, Cross? We've done our job. The intelligence is confirmed. We're Oscar Mike at 2200 hours. Get your gear ready. That night, Cross found Lin in the clinic. She was treating a young boy who'd stepped on a punjai stake, her hands gentle as she cleaned the wound. When she saw Cross's face, she dismissed the boy and stood, waiting. They're bombing the village tomorrow, Cross said, the words ripping out of him. You have to leave tonight now. Where would I go, Daniel? This is my home. Anywhere. Just away from here. I can't. His voice broke. I can't be the reason you die. Lin crossed to him, her hands cupping his face. You beautiful, broken man, she whispered. You think you can save me? You think your love is enough to protect me from this war? Come with me, Cross said desperately. When we extract, I'll hide you. I'll get you to Saigon. And what about everyone else? What about the 63 people in this village who will burn tomorrow while you save the one woman you've fallen in love with? Her eyes were fierce now, blazing. That's not love, Daniel. That's cowardice. The truth of her words cut deeper than any blade. Cross stood there, a trained killer, a decorated soldier, completely powerless against the impossible mathematics of war. There has to be another way, he said. There is, Lin replied. You can tell them the truth. Tell them this village isn't a military target. Tell them we're just people trying to survive. They won't listen. The orders have already been... Then make them listen. Lin's voice rose, passionate and desperate. You're a sergeant in the Special Forces. They trust your intelligence. Tell them the supply route is somewhere else. Give them coordinates to the real Viet Cong positions in the mountains. Save these people, Daniel. Be the man I fell in love with, not the machine the army turned you into. Cross stared at her, his entire world narrowing to this single moment, this impossible choice. Everything he'd been trained to do, every oath he'd sworn, every principle he'd built his life around, it all collapsed against the simple fact that he couldn't let Lin die. If I do this, he said slowly, if I falsify intelligence and redirect the strike, That's treason. That's a court-martial. That's life in Leavenworth if they don't execute me." "I know," Lynn whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I know what I'm asking you to give up. And if you can't do it, I'll understand. I'll love you anyway, even as I die." Cross pulled her close, his mind spinning through scenarios, calculations, desperate plans. He thought about Michael, about his brother's last moments at Kaysan, about all the times he'd wondered if following orders was the same thing as doing what was right. He thought about the children he'd seen playing in the village, about the old women who'd fed him rice, about the young man with the punji stake injury who just wanted his foot to heal so he could work in the paddies again. And he thought about Lynn, about this woman who'd shown him that the enemy wasn't a monolith, that humanity existed on both sides of every line, drawn on every map by men who'd never walked through these jungles, never felt this mud, never looked into the eyes of the people they so casually condemned to death. "I'll do it," Cross said finally. "I'll redirect the strike, but Lynn, you need to understand, when they figure it out, and they will figure it out, I'm done. My life is over." "No," Lynn said, kissing him with desperate intensity. "Your life is just beginning. For the first time, you're choosing it instead of letting others choose it for you." That night, Cross went to Captain Wade with a revised intelligence report. He'd found evidence, he said, that the supply cache had been moved. The real target was a cave system 3 kilometers north, away from the village, in the uninhabited mountains. His recon had been thorough, he was certain. Wade studied the map, his eyes sharp. "You're sure about this, Cross? Because if we redirect this strike based on faulty intel, it's both our asses." "I'm sure, sir," Cross said, meeting his commander's eyes without flinching. "The village is clean. The real target is here." Wade nodded slowly. "All right. I'll radio it in. Good work, Sergeant." The next morning at 0600 hours, Cross stood at the edge of Puok Min village and watched as F-4 Phantoms screamed overhead, their bombs falling on empty jungle 3 kilometers away. The ground shook. Fire bloomed on the mountainside, and the village remained standing, its people alive, unaware of how close they'd come to annihilation. Lynn found him there, her hand slipping into his. "You did it," she whispered. "I committed treason," Cross replied. "I falsified intelligence. I lied to my commanding officer. I violated every oath I ever took." "You chose love over war," Lynn said. "That's not treason. That's the most human thing you've ever done." But Cross knew it wasn't over. He'd bought time, but not freedom. Within days, reconnaissance would reveal the cave system was empty. Questions would be asked. Investigations would begin. And when the truth came out, there would be no mercy. He had 3 choices: return to his unit and face court-martial, disappear into the jungle and become a deserter, or stay in Phuoc Minh with Lin and risk capture by either side. "Come with me," Lin said, as if reading his thoughts. "Not to Saigon, not back to your war, but deeper into the highlands. There are villages where neither side goes, places where the war hasn't reached yet. We can start over. We can be just Daniel and Lin, not American and Vietnamese, not soldier and nurse, just us." Cross looked at her, this woman who'd become his entire world in less than 2 weeks, and made his final choice. They left Phuoc Minh that night. Cross destroyed his radio, buried his uniform, and walked into the jungle carrying nothing but his knife, a compass, and Lin's hand in his. Behind him, his former life burned away like morning mist. Ahead of him lay only uncertainty, danger, and the woman he'd sacrificed everything to protect. For 2 months, they survived in the highlands. Lin knew the land, knew which villages would shelter them, knew how to trade medical skills for food and safety. Cross learned to farm, to fish, to live without the structure of military discipline. They found a small village called Ban Mi, where the war was a distant rumor, and for a brief, shining moment, they were happy. But war doesn't forgive, and it never forgets. In June 1969, an NVA patrol came through Ban Mei. They were looking for deserters, for spies, for anyone who didn't belong. Someone in the village, Cross never learned who, mentioned the American living with the nurse from Phuoc Minh. The patrol commander was a lieutenant named Tran, and he recognized Lin immediately. "I know you," he said coldly. "You're the one who treats Americans. You're a collaborator." "I treat everyone," Lynn said, her voice steady despite the AK-47 pointed at her chest. "I'm a nurse. I follow my oath." "And what about him?" Tran gestured at Cross. "What oath explains why you're living with an American Special Forces soldier?" Cross stepped forward, his hands raised. "She saved my life, that's all. She didn't know who I was. I lied to her." "Such loyalty," Tran said mockingly. "Very touching. You'll both come with us. Command will want to interrogate you." They were taken to a prison camp deeper in the jungle, a place that existed on no map, where the rules of war were suggestions at best. Cross was separated from Lynn immediately. For 3 days he endured interrogation, beatings, sleep deprivation, the constant threat of execution, but he told them nothing. Not about his mission, not about his team, not about Lynn's role in his desertion. On the 4th day, they brought him to a small clearing. Lynn was there, kneeling in the mud, her hands bound behind her back. Tran stood beside her, a pistol in his hand. "You're going to tell us everything," Tran said to Cross. "Every operation your team ran, every intelligence contact in the villages, every coordinate you were given, or she dies right here, right now." Cross looked at Lynn. Her face was bruised, her lips split, but her eyes were clear and fierce. She shook her head slightly, a silent message. "Don't." "I can't tell you anything," Cross said, his voice breaking. "Because if I do, more people die. More villages burn. I won't be responsible for that." "Then you've chosen," Tran said, and raised the pistol to Lynn's head. "Wait!" Cross shouted, stepping forward. "Kill me instead. She's innocent. She didn't know what I was. I manipulated her. It's all on me." Tran laughed, a sound like broken glass. "You Americans! You think everything is about individual guilt and innocence. You don't understand that in war there are no innocents. There's only which side you're on." "Then I'm on her side," Cross said. "I choose her. I choose love over all of this insanity. Shoot me and let her go." For a long moment, Tran studied them both. Then he lowered the pistol. "No," he said quietly. "I won't give you the mercy of dying for her. Instead, you'll live knowing that you could have saved her and chose not to." He raised the pistol again and Cross screamed, lunging forward, but the guards tackled him, drove him into the mud, held him down as the shot rang out, as Lynn's body crumpled, as the only good thing in Cross's world disappeared in an instant of violence and smoke. They released him 3 days later, dumping him at the edge of a firebase, where American forces found him more dead than alive. The official report said he'd been captured after his team was ambushed, that he'd endured torture but revealed nothing, that he was a hero who'd survived against impossible odds. No one ever asked about the Vietnamese nurse. No one ever questioned why his intelligence report had been faulty. The war ground on, consuming everything in its path, and Cross became one more statistic, one more damaged soul sent home to try to rebuild a life from the ashes. He never told anyone the truth. Not the debriefing officers, not the therapists at the VA hospital, not the other veterans he met at the support groups. He carried the secret like a stone in his chest, a weight that never diminished, never eased. Years passed. The war ended. America moved on. But Cross remained frozen in that moment in the jungle, watching Lynn die because he'd loved her, because love in war is both the most natural and the most dangerous thing in the world. He returned to Montana in 1971, to the ranch that no longer felt like home, to a family that didn't recognize the stranger who'd come back wearing his face. He tried to work the land, tried to lose himself in the simple rhythm of seasons and cattle and crops. But every night, he dreamed of Phuoc Minh village, of Lynn's hands treating wounds, of the choice he'd made to save 63 people by dooming himself. On quiet days, when the wind moved through the grass and the mountains stood eternal and indifferent, Cross would wonder if he'd made the right choice. He'd committed treason, he'd deserted, he'd violated every code he'd been taught to honor, but he'd also saved a village. He'd chosen humanity over orders. He'd loved someone so completely that he'd been willing to sacrifice everything, even though it had cost him everything anyway. In 1995, 26 years after Lynn's death, Cross received a letter forwarded through the VA. It was from Vietnam, written in careful English, and it said simply, "My mother told me about you before she died. about the American soldier who loved her enough to betray his country. I'm writing to tell you that Phuoc Minh village still stands. The children you saved have children of their own now. My mother's sacrifice meant something. Your love meant something. Thank you. There was no signature, no return address, but enclosed with the letter was a photograph, an old creased picture of Lynn standing outside her clinic, smiling at the camera, alive and beautiful in the moment before war took her. Cross kept that photograph until the day he died in 2003, at the age of 66. He never married, never had children, never spoke about Vietnam except in fragments, in nightmares, in the coded language of survivors. But in his final hours, medicated and drifting, he smiled and whispered a name. Lynn. And perhaps, in whatever exists beyond this world, he finally found the peace that had eluded him for 34 years. My friends, I need to tell you something important. What you just heard was a dramatized fictional narrative created for educational purposes. This story isn't real. Daniel Cross and Lynn Nguyen never existed. But stories like this, they happened all the time during the Vietnam War. Between 1955 and 1975, countless soldiers faced impossible moral choices in Southeast Asia. The war was fought not just between armies, but within the hearts of individual men and women who found themselves in situations where duty, love, morality, and survival collided in devastating ways. Soldiers did fall in love with Vietnamese civilians. Some did falsify intelligence to protect villages. Some did desert. And many people, soldiers and civilians alike, paid the ultimate price for love, for loyalty, for simply being human in the midst of mechanized destruction. The Vietnam War was America's longest military engagement until Afghanistan, and it cost approximately 58 Zhao American lives and over 2 million Vietnamese lives. It was a war where the lines between combatant and civilian, between right and wrong, between following orders and following conscience, were often impossibly blurred. I created this story to help us reflect on that period, to understand the human cost of conflict, and to remember that behind every statistic, every casualty report, every military operation, there were real people making real choices with consequences that echoed through their entire lives. Love in wartime isn't romantic. It's tragic, complicated, and often fatal, but it's also undeniably human. It's proof that even in the worst circumstances, even when everything tells us to hate, to kill, to see the enemy as less than human, the heart can still recognize another heart. That recognition is both our greatest weakness and our greatest strength. So I ask you to think about Daniel and Lynn not as real people, but as symbols of all the impossible love stories that war has destroyed throughout history. Think about the choices we make when everything we've been taught conflicts with what our hearts are telling us. Think about the price of love and the price of duty, and whether they can ever truly be reconciled. And remember that even though this story is fiction, the pain it depicts was real for thousands of people. War creates these situations, war forces these choices, and the only way to honor those who suffered is to tell their stories, even when we have to invent the names and faces, because the truth is too vast and too painful to capture in its entirety. So tell me, my friend, what did you think of this story? Did it move you? Did it make you think? And I'm curious, where are you watching this from? What city, what state, what part of the world? Drop a comment and let me know. I love hearing from you all. Love knowing that these stories reach people everywhere, that we're all connected by our shared humanity. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring about stories that matter. And remember, the greatest sin isn't loving someone you're not supposed to love. The greatest sin is building a world where love becomes a crime. Take care of yourselves. Send this to someone who needs to hear it. And I'll see you in the next story. Much love to all of you. Until next time.